Hello, everybody. Apologies for the delay, the slight delay there. We're going to get started with today's Short Breaks information session. Thank you very much for joining us. It's great to see so many people on the call. We're going to start with some introductions and then provide an overview of the format of today's session, as well as what we're going to cover. So we will get started promptly as we appreciate that people will have other places to be. So first of all, to start with some introductions. So my name's Chloe Harvey, for those of you that I don't know, and I'm the Programme Manager for Thrive to 25 at Southwark. So this is a Short Breaks innovation programme, and we're looking at how we can develop our Short Breaks offer in the borough to respond to feedback that we've had from many of you and also colleagues from different parts of our local health and social care system, and also to try new things and see what works for local families. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Bev, who's going to introduce herself.
Thank you. Lovely to see so many people here today. My name's Bev Kemp and I am the All Age Disability Service Manager. So some of you may know me, but I'm sure many of you don't. So it's lovely to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bev. So in terms of the format today, so for people who may be familiar with the webinar format, just want to reassure you that cameras are off, mics are off. So we are recording the session, but nobody can see your face or hear your voice. So just want to reassure you of that point. As mentioned, we are recording it so that we can share this with people who weren't able to attend today. And because it's a webinar format, you'll be able to ask questions or leave comments through the Q&A function. So you should have a top bar at the top of your screen. If you're on the phone, it may be lower down, but that allows you to ask questions. And we do have time for questions at the end, so we'll be taking as many questions as we can. We won't have time necessarily for all of the questions you may have. So what we will look to do is issue a frequently asked questions document at the end of the session, and we'll circulate that with everybody that attended. So without further ado, we'll move on to the content of the day. So what we're going to cover today. So we're going to cover what are short breaks. We know that this is terminology that some people are familiar with, and for others it may be new. So we'll let you know what we mean by that. We'll also let you know what we mean by universal, targeted and specialist services, and where you can find information about what's available. We're going to tell you a bit about the new targeted short break service in Southwark and the criteria for accessing this service. We're also going to go through how you can use the new booking platform, and that's an online platform called EEQU, to register for targeted short breaks. And then there's also going to be an opportunity at the end for you to provide feedback on recent experiences and also on this information session, so we can improve things for future events. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Bev, and she's going to talk to you about when an assessment with the All Age Disability Service may be needed. So hopefully this will provide a bit of sort of context related to short breaks in Southwark, and more information on how you can access those services. So first of all, we're going to start with what are short breaks. So short breaks are opportunities for disabled children and young people to do something fun and develop their skills and independence, whilst also providing parents and carers with a valuable break from their caring role. And short breaks, they can range from a few hours, so it might be after school club, weekend activity, or an overnight break, and they can take place inside the home or away from it. So here's some examples. So might be, as mentioned, after school, weekend and holiday clubs. Might be a support from a personal assistant or support worker to access community activities, or it could be, in some cases, an overnight break. So when we talk about short breaks, we're talking about those opportunities for disabled children, young people and their families. And that's what the session today is all about. So when you might hear people talk about universal, targeted and specialist short breaks, so we want to be really clear on what we mean by these terms, as we know that, you know, it isn't common language that's used, and sometimes when we think about short breaks, we think about it in the round. So there are a range of services available, and when we talk about universal services, these are the services in Southwark that are available for all children, whether disabled or not. So a broad range of services. We're going to talk to you about those in a second, and where you can find information about those services. When we talk about targeted services, we're talking specifically about services for disabled children and disabled children that meet a certain criteria in order to access targeted services that are provided by the social care department in Southwark. And then when we talk about specialist services, we're talking about the services for those children with most complex needs who require support over and above what's available through targeted services. So as you can see by the pyramid, the numbers of children decreases as we go up the pyramid. So obviously universal services, the broad range of universal services, then there's targeted services for those that need a bit more support than what's available through universal, and then specialist is for that smaller number of children that require support over and above what's available through targeted services. So in terms of universal services, so universal services, as we mentioned, are services for all children in Southwark, whether they have a disability or not. And there's some examples of universal services here. So they may include stay and play sessions for children at the children and family centres and family hubs in Southwark. And this is the sort of general universal stay and play sessions. Our children and family centres and family hubs do run some targeted sessions as well, which are specifically for children with special educational needs and disabilities. And you may have heard about these. These are called Sensational, but there's a lot of universal provision there through our children and family centres. We also have a range of youth clubs in the borough. We have after school clubs, we have adventure playgrounds, we have breakfast clubs, and then there's also things like the free swim and gym sessions. So they're just a few examples of the universal services that are available for children and young people in the borough. And in terms of where you can find that information, so I've included some links here, and just to mention, these slides will be shared, so you don't need to worry about making notes of these, but you can find information about universal services on various parts of our Southwark website. So Southwark has a really comprehensive childcare webpage. This includes lots and lots of information about our children and family centres, our breakfast clubs, after school clubs, holiday schemes, things like that. So that's a really useful source of information for about universal provision. If you've got a young person, a young person who's sort of secondary school age, then there is some really helpful information on both the services for young people webpage, and this includes youth clubs, adventure playgrounds, things like that. But also we have One Hub for young people, and so One Hub Southwark is a really user-friendly site that includes lots of information about the range of services available for young people in the borough. So again, really useful source of information. And it's important to note that providers of universal services are expected to make reasonable adjustments so that children with additional needs can attend, and that's an expectation across the board that our providers are making reasonable adjustments for children with additional needs. Now, what we recognise is that for some children, even with reasonable adjustments, there may be cases where a provider can't accommodate a child's needs. So where children and young people have additional needs that may not be met within a universal setting, then there are some targeted services available. And examples of targeted services include school holiday weekend or after school activities that may have a higher staff ratio and additional resources to support children with a range of additional needs. And the social care division in Southwark Council, apologies, funds some targeted short break services for children that meet certain eligibility criteria, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The general staff ratio is 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, but there are also some 1-to-1 placements for children that have more complex needs. And there are often other targeted activities available. So this is really important, that are funded via other parts of the council or other external agencies. So we do have some targeted provision that's funded through social care, but there's also other targeted provision that's specifically for children and young people with disabilities, special educational needs, with that higher staff ratio and additional resources that may be funded by other parts of the council. So for example, we have some SEND provision that's funded through the Holiday Activities and Food Programme, which some of you may be familiar with. And there's also some youth provision that's funded via our youth service, and there's some SEND specific provision available through that as well. But these targeted services are listed on Southwark's local offer. So on the local offer, and you may or may not have heard of the local offer, But the local offer, every local authority has a statutory duty to publish a local offer, and this describes the services and support available for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities in the borough. And on our local offer, you'll find a range of information about different services that are available, but also activities and opportunities that are available for your child or young person. And this will include the activities that are funded by the social care department, but also other parts of the council and external organisations as well. So it's a really good first port of call for information about activities that are available in the borough. So in terms of the targeted short breaks that are funded via social care in Southwark, and we've just established some new contracts with some new providers. So we this followed feedback from a number of consultations that have been undertaken over the last few years in terms of what people wanted from short breaks in Southwark, and we undertook a competitive exercise, and we had a number of providers apply through that exercise, and these are the providers that have been awarded contracts for the next 3 years. So we've got an organisation called Sportsworks, and Sportsworks are delivering sport and physical activity clubs after school, at weekends and during school holidays. They've got a couple of after-school clubs, one at Spa and one at Damalola Taylor Centre, and they're also running weekend and school holiday activities at the full details will be included in the link. So I've just, sorry, it's just slipped out of my head. But there's all the details are included in the links within the document. So the age for that provision is 5 to 18. Activities include dodgeball, basketball, parachute games, football, fitness, and lots more. So it is a sports club, but it includes sort of games and other fitness and physical activity as well. And support is provided at a general ratio of 1 to 4. So Sportsworks, and when we're thinking about the ratio of support that's provided, they tend to provide support on the lower end of the ratio for young people that can be supported in that sort of group setting and within a sort of physical activity games-based provision. We've then got Endorphins. So Endorphins are delivering school holiday play schemes and some Saturday sessions, and they work with children and young people from ages 8 to 19. And the activities that they deliver include things like arts, crafts, games, sensory activities, yoga, and much more. And they've got some, they use the outdoor space, so they've got access to outdoor space for games and things as well. And the support that they provide is generally at a staff ratio of 1 to 3, but they also have a designated number of one-to-one places available each day for children and young people that require a higher level of support. And then we have Whippersnappers. So Whippersnappers deliver a varied programme of holiday and Saturday sessions for children and young people that require a higher level of support. So they work with children aged 5 to 19, and their support is provided at a ratio of 1 to 1 to meet the needs of children and young people with additional support requirements. So these new services commenced in April of this year with the Easter provision, and will be continuing for the next 3 years. It's worth mentioning that over the school holidays, there will also be some one-off workshop trips and family events which are funded via some different organisations. So there'll be a menu of other opportunities as well over the summer holidays that families can access. And these may be activities just for children and young people, or it may be things that the whole family can attend. It's worth mentioning that these are the activities that are funded via social care as part of our sort of core funding. But what we have had over the last 12 months and continuing for the next 12 months is some additional funding from the Department for Education for some additional short breaks activity through Thrive to 25, which some of you may have heard of, which is our short breaks innovation programme. So some of you may have heard of provision like Sensational, which I mentioned earlier, and they work with children of from 0 to 11, and they're delivering sessions, some stay in place sessions, but also some short break sessions where families can leave their child in the care of the trained staff across some of our children and family centres. So there's some additional provision there. There's also been some additional provision for 16 to 25-year-olds through a range of different providers, and that's been midweek and at weekends, and some sessions during the holidays. And we've also had some additional provision for children with a diagnosis of autism who may experience behaviours of distress or behaviours that challenge through Resources for Autism. So you may have heard about some of this other provision as well, and this is additional provision that's been funded via the Thrive to 25 programme this year. But as mentioned, the local offer is a really good first port of call for information about the provision that's available. There are restrictions on some of this provision, so it is specifically for children that meet certain criteria who are unable to access any other provision. But the provision that's available to self-refer to or to book, the information is available on the local offer. So in terms of eligibility criteria, and apologies for all of the talking, we'll get through this and then there'll be an opportunity for us to take your questions. So in terms of the eligibility criteria for the social care funded provision to access the activities that we've just mentioned, so those 3 providers, children and young people must meet the targeted short breaks eligibility criteria. So for a general placement with staff ratio of 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, that's aged 5 to 19, Southwark residents, must have an education, health and care plan and be unable to access universal services due to the level of need or they require additional support. So as we saw when we talked earlier about universal targeted and specialist provision, this targeted provision is really for those young people that even with reasonable adjustments are unable to access universal services. If children require a higher level of support, so they require enhanced placement, so that's a staff ratio of 1 to 1, and as we mentioned, endorphins and whippersnappers support children at a ratio of 1 to 1. In addition to the criteria above, this provision is for children that attend a special school, either in or out of the borough, but again meet the criteria, so that resident, and or they open to the All Age Disability Service in Southwark, and we'll talk about when a referral to the All Age Disability Service may be required. And this provision is for children and young people who have severe or complex learning disability, physical disability or health condition. So that's just a little bit of information about the eligibility criteria. So moving us on. So the way that people can access targeted short breaks has changed this year. We've started to use an online booking system, and the reason we've done that is because of the feedback that we received from families during the consultations. And this was very much that families didn't know where to find information about short breaks. They were struggling to book on. They were unclear as to how waiting lists worked, and that some families were really well connected and able to access provision, and others were really struggling. So what we wanted to do is achieve these aims, basically. So we wanted to improve the booking experience for families, and we wanted to improve equity and transparency. So we wanted that equity of access and transparency around the offer. We wanted to improve management of waiting lists, so that if families weren't able to get onto provision at this time, they knew that they were on a waiting list, and that when a place became available, they would be next in line. And we wanted to reduce administration, because obviously we want to be as efficient as possible, so that we can be funding as many short breaks as possible, rather than it being taken up with really timely administration. So we want to improve administration for our colleagues that are delivering activities, as well as for those sort of coordinating them, so we can ensure that we're being as efficient and spending public money in the best possible way. So we've started to use a system called EQ or EEQU. And EQ, some of you may recognise EQ if you've accessed any activities through the holiday and food programme in Southwark. So they use this system. So we want to provide as much consistency for families as possible. So if they have one child that may be accessing something through the holiday and food programme, and one child that may be accessing something through short breaks, then we want to make sure that it's the same system. So we're trying to be as consistent as possible. So for the general short breaks provision, families can register directly with the providers via the booking platform. So we've included the landing page there. So if you go onto that landing page, that will list the activities, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second. For the enhanced placements one-to-one support, a dedicated link is shared by social workers or special schools. So as mentioned, the eligibility criteria for those enhanced placements are either that children are attending a special school or they are open to the all age disability service in Southwark. So that for enhanced placements, those links will be shared via those teams that are in touch with eligible families. So moving us on. So how to use EQ. So this is what the Short Breaks so that Short Breaks EQ landing page looks like when you if you look at it on a computer. And so as you can see, you've got a general description on the left hand side which just provides a summary of the provision that's listed. You've then got the listings, so the different providers and the sessions that they're delivering, and you've got the upcoming dates on the right hand side. You can also, if you click on the map view here, you can see the locations that the provision is being delivered from. So if it's easier to view it as a map view, you can do that by clicking up here. If you're viewing it on a phone, it will look slightly different. So this is the sort of phone view. So you'll have the listings on the first tab. You can then click onto dates and it will give you a view of the dates and the upcoming sessions. Again, you can do a map view and you can see things on a map instead and the locations they're delivering from. Or if you go on to the about bit, it just provides a bit of information about the Southwark Short Breaks offer. So you can either view it on a laptop or a phone, and it's been developed, it's very sort of modern technology, so it's been designed to be as easy to use, as accessible, as intuitive as possible. And so we know that our HAF colleagues, before moving on to this platform, I think they researched about 20 different platforms and opted for this because it was the clearest and easiest to use. So when you click into a listing, this is what it will look like. So it will give you the main details at the top here. So it will give you the location, it will give you the age range, it will tell you the types of tickets that are available. So for example, Endorphins offers both one-to-one support and 1-to-3 support, so that's included here. It will tell you when the next date is, it will tell you how it's funded, and it will tell you what type of provision it is, so Specialist Send, Holiday Club. Then when you scroll down, and we haven't got the full screen here, but you'll get a summary of the provision. You'll be able to see what the objectives of the provision are, so what they'll support your child and young person with. It will include a map, so you can view on a map the information, and it will give you more information about the organisation as well. So how long, things like they'll have a bio for the organisation, so how long they've been operating for, you know, where they operate, that kind of thing. So you can find out more information about the organisation as well. It'll also include any details as to what's included in the provision. So yeah, that's all there. So you can review all of that information. If you then click onto book, what you'll get is a list of the available dates. So what you get, and for some providers, they might have split the dates by age range. So as you can see, there are dates for 8 to 12-year-olds, and then there are dates for 13 to 19-year-olds. And so you can see when these sessions are running and the type of provision that's available. When you click on to select dates, this is when it's going to ask you to create an account if you haven't already got one. Now, it's really important at this point that the account is created with the parent or carer, the legal guardian's details, so name and email address, because, and the reason for this is all of the updates and reminders about the sessions will be sent to this email address. So it's no good if maybe a member of staff from school or a social worker or another practitioner fills this in on a family's behalf, because then the family isn't going to get the information that they need. Equally, when we have a look through later, you'll see that there are certain things you need to tick to agree to things like that, you know, your data will be processed by the platform and shared with the provider, and we obviously need that permission from the legal guardian as opposed to somebody supporting the family. But obviously what somebody can do is be with somebody whilst they're doing this and support them through the process. So as I mentioned, really important that this is the parent carer legal guardian that completes this. And then once you've you've created a login. Obviously, if you've created a login before, you just put in your password and it brings you through, and you select the dates. So you select the dates that you're looking for. It'll tell you how many tickets are left for the different ticket types. So and you can also filter it. So if your child requires one-to-one support, you can just tick the one-to-one support box, and it will show you the dates that there's one-to-one support places left. So you can tick that box and then click onto book. And this is when it's going to start asking you about your child's information. And what I want to reassure you here is, again, we heard lots of feedback from families that you as far as possible, you want to sort of tell your story once, you want to provide your information once. Now, we recognise that there are times when additional information will be required, but for the purposes of this platform, you'll only need to fill in your information on this platform once. And once that's been processed, then actually when you book things in the future, you won't have to go through this whole rigmarole again. So when it will ask who's attending, for this place booking provision, you only need to include details of child attendees. Obviously there's a box here around adult attendees. So if you're in the summer, for example, that, as mentioned, there might be some family events, you might have to book both yourself or another legal guardian, or you might have your children might have siblings, so you might be looking to book multiple children and multiple attendees. But if you're just looking to book a child onto a play scheme, then what you do is you'll click the new child attendee bit, and you'll be first of all asked to put in their name and their date of birth and to save them. And then you tick to say, yeah, that's the child that is looking to attend. Appreciate the way we're going through this now. It makes it seem like there's lots of stages, but a lot of this is you as I say, you be able to click through quite quickly, and you press next, and then you select what level of support's required. And then this is where you fill in the information, the more detailed information about your child or young person. So it's going to ask you for information, first of all, some booker information about yourself, so a phone number, a postcode, second emergency contact, and it wants you to confirm that you're the parent or carer. So as mentioned, this is really important that this is done either by the parent or carer or with the parent and carer, and that you've read and accepted the short breaks privacy notice, and you can view that and you can see how the information will be used. And these are the questions that you will be asked. So it's just asking about the needs of the child or young person, basically. So it will ask you for details of the school they attend. It will ask for dietary requirements. It will ask for what needs they have, what level of support they require, likes, dislikes, how they like to communicate, all of that sort of stuff. And as mentioned, it does seem like a lot of questions, but once these have been answered, then they are in the system so that when you come to book next time, you just review it and check that it's still relevant and current, and update it where necessary. It's really important that you do add as much information as you can here, just to give the provider that will be reviewing the booking as much information as they can. And the providers may need to follow up with you for more information, so they may have further information that they require in order to establish a support plan if your child has specific needs. So unfortunately, it's not the only thing you'll have to complete, but as far as this system goes, once you've completed this once, you'll then be in a position where you can book onto the provision without having to fill all of this in again. And then last bit is just a few final details and clicking that you give permission, whether you want to give photo consent or not, and things like that. So this is the information that you have to provide on your child. But as mentioned, once you're registered on EQ, then you won't have to fill it in completely again. We'll just ask you to review it. Okay, so that's how you use the EQ booking platform, and appreciate that some people on this call may have used it for Easter or may have used it for booking onto an after school club or a Saturday session. And I'm going to ask for a bit of feedback on it afterwards, because we appreciate that it may not be perfect straight away, but we're working really hard with the provider to make sure that it is as user friendly and as accessible as possible. So in terms of holidays, just something worth mentioning that for the social care funded holiday provision, so the providers that we mentioned earlier, the provision is delivered during the longer holidays, so Easter, summer, and a small amount at Christmas, some of the providers, but it's predominantly Easter and summer. Due to anticipated demand, we do have to cap the provision to ensure that there is some equity. So there is a maximum of 10 days or 2 weeks per child per year, and this is subject to availability. So you still be required to register, and we recognise that there won't always be, you know, enough provision for everybody that wants it. So it will be subject to availability, but we are capping it at that sort of 2 weeks a year because of the demand over holiday periods. And in terms of registrations for holiday provision, they'll open at least 4 weeks in advance of the holiday periods, but longer if possible at summer. And we're working with our providers to ensure that we do have as long a lead-in time as possible. It's worth noting at the moment, so the after school and weekend sessions aren't capped. So in addition to accessing sort of 10 days or 2 weeks during the holidays, you know, there's access to after school and weekend clubs, and they aren't capped currently because demand during those periods isn't as high as during summer. So I'm gonna, you can hear somebody else's voice for a few minutes now also. That's what we've covered there so far is the universal provision and then the targeted short breaks provision. But what I'm going to do now is hand over to my colleague Bev to talk about specialist services and when a referral to all age disability may be required.
Thank you, Chloe. So obviously my service is the All Age Disability Service, which would come into that top tier of specialist services. So the services are for disabled children with the most complex needs that require support over and above what is available through targeted services. So Chloe's just talked through the targeted services, so this would be on top of that. Access to specialist services is via an assessment with the All Age Disability Service. If someone requires an assessment, that referral should be made through the multi-agency safeguarding hub, and that's kind of for all children in Southwark where kind of a social care intervention would be required, and we can provide you with that link, or alternatively that's via a web form or a telephone call, and that can be done yourselves, and that will go through and then will come through to our service. If eligible, a care plan will be agreed with the parent or carer as to what additional support will be required in order to meet your child's and your family's needs. And obviously we would consider kind of a family's needs in conjunction with the child's needs. So your child's needs are kind of the predominant factor, but obviously we take you into account as the parent carer. Further information about the All Age Disability Service is on the Southwark Council website. So I appreciate that sometimes it's really tricky to navigate. It is something that kind of we're looking at, but the local offer is on there and it's the same page. So you will find all of the services kind of for Southwark children on that one page. But we are sort of a section on there which you click on. I think it's the social care tile, and once you click on the social care tile, we would have our threshold on there. There is also obviously the local offer on there, and there's all sorts of other documents for you to read. So that is the specialist services.
Great, thanks very much, Bev. So we're just going to share with you some useful links, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So some useful links for you. So obviously there's been links throughout this document, and we will share this document, so as Bev mentioned, to make it easier to navigate. And we are doing a lot of work, as Bev said, to try and improve navigation of our local websites and information, because we recognise that it can be challenging. But the local offer will continue to be the first port of call for information about short breaks. So if you're not familiar with the local offer, please do check it out and have a look at the information that's available. And this it includes a range of services and activities, both funded by social care, but other parts of the council and external sources, as mentioned. So it's been a bringing together of local services and provision that are available for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. The links to book on via EEQU, so that's specifically for the targeted provision that's funded by social care that we mentioned, so those 3 providers. That's So for the stuff that you can self-refer to, that's included on the local offer. Alongside additional provision that may be available. So here, what's listed on EQ isn't necessarily the full offer. So I think that's what we want to stress here, that the short breaks landing page and the link to register there is really helpful for registering for the targeted short breaks that we've mentioned. But there may be other things that are being funded in a different way and by different parts of the council, external partners, voluntary community sector organisations that are listed on the local offer. So everything on EEQU will be on the local offer, but not everything on the local offer will be on EEQU. So always best to go to the local offer as your first port of call for information. And then at the bottom here, we recognise we've got quite a few practitioners or staff or volunteers that work with families on the call. So there's a really useful link here which demonstrates how you can help a parent or carer to book a targeted short breaks. So we recognise that some people may experience barriers, whether that be digital barriers, whether that be language barriers, to accessing the online platform. So there's a really helpful article here on how you can best support somebody to access the platform and book a short break. So please have a look at that video and support the families that you're working with if they are struggling to access. Okay, so I'm just going to take a breather for a couple of minutes and ask that if people on the call, and I'm going to see if I can copy and paste that into the chat. I'm probably not going to be able to now. Never mind. If we can, if you've got if you're on your laptop and you've got a phone handy, if you can provide some feedback via this form here or via the link, and we'll share again this afterwards. But this will provide us with really useful feedback on both the EQ platform for anybody that's used it, but also today's session and your experiences of accessing short breaks in recent times. So that will really help us to improve the offer and the way that we work with you. So please do take a couple of minutes if you can to complete that. Right, I think that's the end of our slides. I'll leave that up there. And I'll ask Rob if we've had any questions in the chat. Okay, so we've had a comment.
Sorry, Chloe, we've had a comment requesting that we share exact links, as I think yourself and Beth have referenced. We are doing some work around the local offer and the council website, but it's just another reference that parents and carers are having difficulties accessing the relevant information. So that's something that we can take on board, and we can share those relevant links. But I guess there'll be a caution around that, is that as we continue to develop the local offer and the website, it's possible that links may move. So it's just to bear in mind that there is an AAD section on there, but we can put the relevant links in.
Yeah, just to mention on that, I have included the exact links to the exact pages in this document, so they should take you to the place you need to get to. But I think with the local offer, we've included the home page for the local offer, because obviously lots of information on there, and different people will be interested in different things. But where we've referenced a specific piece of information about services, or like the childcare web pages, for example, they are exact links.
And then there was a second comment or a question regarding the cutoff age for children. So an example is whippersnappers. The requirement is that the child turns 5 before August 2023, and it was whether that is this the case with other providers? So I know endorphins have got a starting age of 8, and if so, can that be made clearer in the information?
Thank you. That's a really, really good point. Thank you for raising that. And you're absolutely right. There is and this often relates to providers' Ofsted registration and some of the stipulations that surround that. So yeah, that's a really important point, and we need to update the information to reflect that. So yeah, thank you whoever raised that.
So they're the only two questions that we've had.
Okay, just I'll go back to the earlier question because I can see it. Sorry, I can see it in the Q&A now, and just want to make sure that I've answered it fully. So for other additional provision, it's not all necessarily held in one place. So it's very difficult for other additional provision to send exact links to that. Within the universal bit, we've sent you some of the sources of information, and on the local offer, when you click on the activity pages, there's different sections. So if you've got a child that's 16 to 25, there's an area that relates specifically for 16 to 25-year-olds. Equally, there's something similar related to leisure provision, and there's other pages which relate to early years support. So there isn't one page at the moment with all of the activity information on. It does depend on the age of the child. So just want to make that clear.
I've published a couple more comments or questions in the chat. So what happens with children who aren't on roll at specialists and have bespoke education provision through Southwark, social work not involved, and no school to provide one-to-one booking link?
So we have had some situations like this where the provider has got in touch and said that they've had a request from somebody that requires one-to-one, and on a case-by-case basis that will be considered. So if somebody technically doesn't meet the enhanced eligibility criteria, but there's evidence that actually that level of support is required, then that will be discussed, and we've had a couple of occasions where that has been discussed with a provider where a booking has come through to them which doesn't technically meet the criteria.
Thank you, Chloe. Next question is there a provision for booking transport to and from holiday groups? I'm thinking of those who would usually use school transport and may need wheelchair transport.
So unfortunately, within the short breaks offer, there isn't transport included. We know that one of our providers can offer some transport on a discretionary basis, but that's in lieu of some of the placement hours that the family can access. So it isn't something, unfortunately, and it is something that we had to think about quite carefully because of the of how I suppose it would reduce the capacity to provide numbers of places basically on these activities because of the relative costs of transport. So no, I don't know if there's anything else to add there, Bev, but it's not part of the targeted short breaks offer.
I think it would be worth saying that if kind of families were really struggling, to have that conversation with providers or to contact kind of school, etc. So we wouldn't want sort of anybody who was accessing or to struggle with that, but kind of equally we have to be sort of fair across the board. So I think if in doubt, kind of contact the provider and have that conversation, and they can always get in contact with us and we can kind of have a look at whether that would need to lead to an assessment of need. So I think just on a case-by-case basis, but across the board, transport isn't provided. But if you have a specific difficulty or specific question, always worth having a conversation with your provider.
Thanks, Bev.
Thank you, Bev. So for referrals to the all age disability team, for young people who are over the age of 18, and I presume not known to all age disability, does the referral still go through or via MASH, Bev?
No. So if your young person is not known to social care, then that referral, because MASH is for under 18s only, so that's just for children. Over 18s, that would come in via the All Age Disability Service, and the number is on the local offer. So if you have a young person not previously known to social care and you want them to access, then that would be via the All Age Disability duty number.
And Bev, what we'll do is I'll update the slides before we send them out with that distinction, just so it's clear for people that if that's under 18, it's MASH, and if it's over 18, it's the All Age Disability Duty line.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bev. Next comment. What does the local offer do and what do they provide?
So the local offer itself is effectively it's not one thing, it's the local offer, if you like. So it's the local offer of services and provision that's available for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And there is I suppose a tangible sort of what's the word, product of that, which is the local offer website. So on the local offer website, that's where all of that information is published. And that website is supported by the Southwark Information and Advice Service, so SIAS. So you might have heard of SIAS, and I think sometimes they're referred to as the local offer, but they're actually an information and advice service in the borough that provides support to families of children with special educational needs and disabilities up to the age of 25. And so their role is to provide that independent advice and support, and to help people navigate the local system. So I think sometimes those two things, it is the same team that manages the local offer. So but the local offer itself is that sort of range of services and support that's available, which is physically manifested in that sort of online local offer website where you can find all of the information.
Thank you, Chloe. The next question is, my child has specialist requirements, but we do not have regular contact with social services. How can I get a targeted link to get him assessed for a short break? So I think that information has been covered during this presentation, but it will be included in the slide deck that will go out, which provides an overview of how to access EEQ, the booking platform, and the outline of the information of the different providers that are listed and are providing short breaks through EEQ. Regarding specialist requirements, I think, Bev, you've mentioned that would need to be a conversation to be had with All Age Disability if as the child is requiring kind of whippersnappers or specialist provision.
Absolutely. I think accessing the local offer, it will give you kind of the threshold for the All Age Disability Service. If you could read that and then have a look to see if you think your child has those specialist needs. Ideally, you would probably start with the local offer and access the platform to see if you can access the targeted short breaks. It's not clear from that kind of what the level of need that you're needing. So I would probably start with kind of the EEQ kind of platform. Providers will always go back to you once you've filled in your information to say, actually, I think this is kind of something where you would need to contact social care. So if in doubt, they will always tell you kind of once you've kind of completed all the information about your child, whether they're able to sort of meet the needs of your child or whether they feel that you would need something kind of over and above that. So always kind of like fill in the information as fully as you can and can take it from there. And it may be that they redirect you to MASH in order for you to kind of make a self-referral through to us, and we can consider your child's needs and your family's needs.
Thanks,
Thank you, Bev. There aren't currently any other questions.
Oh, I think we've got a hand up, but we've as it's a webinar format, we've got the mics and the cameras disabled, just because we will be circulating the video afterwards. Apologies, I can't see who that is, but I wonder if whoever it is can pop their question in the Q&A. I'm not sure that we've had any more questions, have we, Rob? Should we leave it a couple more minutes? And then call the meeting to a close. And please, if you haven't had a look at the feedback form, please do. If you can't, because it's on your screen currently and you can't click into it, we will circulate it following this meeting, and would really appreciate your feedback, as we say, to help us improve the offer and any information sessions we deliver in future.
So I think we've just received an email from Nikki at the Southwark Independent Voice. So I think a number of parents and carers are having issues with the question and answer option. So there are questions, but they haven't been able to ask them.
Okay.
So I guess maybe what we could do is, if there are questions, so we're going to do a question or an FAQ, frequently asked questions. So if you're unable to access the Q&A tab at the top of this information session, maybe what we're proposing that they email us in the questions, and then we can either, if they're specific to individual children, we can provide a specific response or direct you to the correct place, link you in, and if they're more general, we can incorporate that into the frequently asked questions.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'm going to put an email address in the queue. Oh, although I'm just concerned that actually people might not be able to see this. So I'll put for those that can see it, I'm putting an email address into the chat, into the Q&A now. If not, I know Nikki's got my my email address, so if you could share that with any of the parents that you're familiar with. It's, if anyone's got a pen, I'll read it out. It's Thrive, THRIVE 2, so TO 25, number 25, so Thrive to 25 at southwark.gov.uk. So that's Thrive to 25 at southwark.gov.uk. So yes, if you have got specific questions and you haven't been able to ask them during this meeting, please do send them through, and as Rob mentioned, we'll get back to you directly if it's an individual question, or we'll add it to the frequently asked questions.
Thank you, Chloe. We've got one more. We've got another question here from Sam. So thanks very much, Sam. Many parents don't speak English as a first language, and as a result, some of them have not been accessing EEQ, which is the booking platform. As a result, they won't be able to book on. Is there anything that we can do to help parents who might find the booking system overwhelming?
So I would imagine that the initial sort of registering is going to be the tricky bit, because that's the bit where you need to fill in quite a bit of information, whereas for subsequent sort of bookings, you then select the dates that you want and you do it that way. So appreciate that if you have English as a second language, it's going to be more challenging. So we are asking, that's why we've invited lots of practitioners, people that work with families in lots of different roles. We've got some of our school colleagues on the call today. We're hoping that if people who are working closely with families are more familiar with the platform, then they will be able to help with that initial registration where there are barriers to access. in extenuating circumstances where even, you know, that support isn't available, there are other ways in which people can book on, but it's very much a last resort really, because it effectively means bypassing the system. And as we mentioned, there's lots of benefits to the system in terms of equity and transparency and things like that. So if somebody is really struggling and can't access the system, then there is a way that somebody else can message, and there's a little box at the top that says message mentor, and actually somebody else can message the mentor or the organisation that they're looking to book onto, rather than the family doing it. And you can just say that you've got somebody that wants to book on, but they're really struggling. So the video that I mentioned at the end, there was a link to a video in terms of how practitioners can support families who find the booking system overwhelming or who are really struggling to access it. So please have a look at that video, because that details what you can do as somebody that's supporting that family. We are also talking to EQ about the information being available in different languages, and that is a functionality that they're working on. So it may be that in the future they'll also be able to access translation through the app.
One additional question, do referrals that are under 18 who are school age go via MASH or another organisation? So I guess there's two ways to answer that. That's referrals for maybe short breaks, and then referrals into the All Age Disability Service for statutory kind of social work intervention and support.
Shall I take just the short break, the targeted short breaks bit, and then hand over to Bev? So I think what's really important here is that with the targeted short breaks, the provision is available to access by self-referral. So you don't require a referral to access targeted short breaks. Any eligible family can go onto the EQ booking platform and register, and then eligibility checks will be undertaken to ensure that they're eligible, and then they'll be able to request a place with their preferred provider. So that's the bit on the targeted short breaks. Obviously, for one-to-one provision, we've said the links are being shared by either special schools or All Age Disability Service to those who meet the eligibility criteria. So there's a slightly different pathway for people who need that more enhanced support. But Bev, in terms of people who need support over and above what's available through targeted short breaks.
I suppose that's a really important clarification to make, that the booking platform, so if you want to go to access the targeted short breaks, your information, if you like, is not going through children's social care. So you will not be known to social services. This is outside of that platform, and that you don't require an assessment from children's social care. So I think that that's an important distinction to make. But if there are kind of additional needs that your child has or your family has, be that kind of that you feel you need more support than the sessions that are able to offer kind of under the targeted service, or a professional has a safeguarding kind of inquiry, that would be via MASH. So if you would want to self-refer kind of because you believe you need more than the 10 sessions, or you kind of feel that your child actually needs 2-to-1, for example, then that would be kind of self-referral by MASH. Or if you're a professional and you have some additional concerns for a family, again, that would be kind of you would speak to colleagues in the MASH. And once that you've had that initial contact from MASH, they would kind of make contact with us. And that would just be to do some basic checks with us that you meet kind of the all age disability threshold, because obviously we do have kind of a criteria, again, which is on the local offer. So that our MASH colleagues would kind of speak to the all age disability service, and then we would probably be your next kind of person that would contact you once you have been via MASH.
Thanks, Bev. I think that's probably the last question we can take, as we're almost on the dot now at 12 o'clock. So I just want to thank everybody for joining today, for taking the time and for asking all of your questions. As mentioned, if you weren't able to ask your question, please do email thrive to25@southwark.gov.uk, and we will get back to you, and we will share the slides following this meeting, so you'll have all of those links that we've talked through today. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.